To represent Ohio's history, I chose the Cincinnati Observatory. The Cincinnati Observatory is located on top of Mount Lookout, and it was the first public observatory in the United States and is known as the birthplace of American astronomy. It is home to one of the oldest telescopes in the world, which was made in 1845, and it was the largest telescopes in America at the time. This telescope is known as the 11-inch Mersenne Mailer refractor. I chose this site because it represents Cincinnati's history as well as the influence it had on the U.S. During this time period, astronomy really wasn't that big of a deal in the U.S. The original telescope actually comes from Germany because Europe was much more advanced in astronomy than America. Because the Cincinnati Observatory was one of the first observatories in the U.S. and had the largest telescope at the time is why it's nicknamed the birthplace of American astronomy. The fourth grade Ohio standard that this topic connects to is many technological innovations that originated in Ohio benefited the United States. The OAE Ohio history domain that it relates to is demonstrate knowledge of the major developments in Ohio history from 1803 to 1920. The founder of the observatory was Ormsby McKnight Mitchell, who was an astronomy professor in Cincinnati as well as a Civil War general. Because of his love for astronomy and people around him started to become more interested in his work, he decided he wanted to build an observatory. He began raising money by going door to door, soliciting $25 per person to invest in 1842. This was equivalent to an average monthly salary during this time. When he raised enough money, he went to Europe in search of a telescope. He ended up purchasing one in Germany, which was then shipped to New Orleans, up the Mississippi and Ohio rivers to downtown Cincinnati. In the photo is the original observatory, which sat at the top of Mount Ida. John Quincy Adams made a speech on November 9, 1843, over the dedication of the observatory. This was Adams' last public speech he ever gave. And then following this event, Mount Ida was renamed Mount Adams. In 1873, there was so much air pollution in downtown, which was making it very difficult to see through the telescope. So they decided to move the observatory to a new location. The area it got moved to is Mount Lookout, and Mount Lookout actually got its name in honor of the new observatory. This new building is a Greek Revival building, which was designed by architect Samuel Hannaford. In the photo is when the observatory first got built, and the sign reads, "This photograph was taken shortly after completion of the observatory at its new location atop Mount Lookout in 1873. Designed by famous Cincinnati architect Samuel Hannaford, it originally had a cupola instead of a dome. The cupola turned by hand and would rotate on repurposed Civil War cannonballs. Behind the observatory was a 5-foot wide time ball. The observatory was responsible for keeping the official time for Cincinnati, and every day they dropped the ball to signal when it was noon." The development of the observatory in Mount Lookout and improved transportation systems to Cincinnati suburbs was the initial transformation of the area. There's actually a walking tour on the Cincinnati Observatory's website that shows off the architectural elements of Mount Lookout. The website describes the tour as the uniqueness of each structure takes you back in time to the early operations of the Cincinnati Observatory and the lifestyles of the first Cincinnatians to make this neighborhood their home. There were 3 periods of development. There was the initial construction from 1873 to 1880, the major construction from 1886 to 1904, which was due to the expansion of the train commuter service, and the last construction from 1910 to 1923, which is due to the addition of Hyde Park. In 1904, they built another building right next to the one at Mount Lookout, which is called the O.M. Mitchell Building. They then moved the original telescope to this building and purchased a new telescope for the original building. In this photo, it's the new building. The new telescope is a 16-inch Alvin & Sons refractor from Massachusetts. This telescope weighs 1,200 pounds, and it was purchased strictly for research, but I believe it is now open to the public as well. It has wheels, which is how you are which is how you move it, and in the next clip will be a short video of the tour guide demonstrating how to use it.
You're not able to see anything except for the sun with a special protective filter, which we don't have for this particular telescope. But you can see how easy it is to move it around. So this is full west if I need to. So it is a little bit more difficult to kind of get a handle on, which is one of the reasons why we don't use this telescope very often, only for special events.
In this photo, there are some artifacts, tools, and technology that they would use at the observatory when they were doing their research. But I think that exploring the Cincinnati Observatory and the history behind it does a great job of representing Ohio's significance. There have been many technological advances in Ohio, and this is one of them. The Cincinnati Observatory was just the beginning for astronomy and new technology in the United States. It also explains the historical context of this time. For example, the founder of the observatory was a Civil War general, and they used Civil War cannonballs to rotate the cupola. So this tells us that around this time was the Civil War and how it even influenced the construction of the dome. It also gives us an insight on the transportation advances in Ohio. Neighborhoods were starting to develop around Mount Lookout because of the new transportation systems. This allowed people to travel easily from this area to downtown for work. The movement of the observatory from Mount Adams to Mount Lookout also shows the air pollution problems going on. As said before, the observatory had to move because there's too much pollution in the air, which was making it very difficult to see out of the telescope. The air pollution was a result of the industrialization at this time. It even explains how some of our areas in Cincinnati got its name. For example, Mount Lookout was named after the second observatory, and Mount Adams was named after John Quincy Adams, who was the 6th U.S. president, and it was named after him because he gave a speech at the observatory in dedication of it. Alright, this is a really horrible photo, and I apologize for that. I couldn't figure out how to get the whole picture in, but I feel like you get the idea. Basically, in 1997, the Cincinnati Observatory becomes a National Historic Landmark. You can't see the sign because it went away for some reason, but it says that this institution, founded in 1843, possesses national significance as the oldest functioning professional observatory in the United States of America.